Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, my fellow Toastmasters, and of course, most especially Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, for a wonderful icebreaker speech this evening. I have a couple pieces of feedback for you. Of course, like many of you who have been to Toastmasters meetings before, I'd like to start with something that I think you did well, some suggestions for improvement, and then something that I think you really hit out of the park. I want to start with your general presentation. I understand you've likely been to a couple of our Toastmasters meetings before, and like everyone who's now been part of the pandemic, or almost everybody, I'm sure, we're well familiar with Zoom. And yet, I still see again and again in a variety of meetings, people that don't follow Kelly's example. So Kelly has a very well lit camera presentation. She's centered in the image. We can see her full face and a good part of her upper body, so we could see some of the gestures she was using. And the image is clear and focused, and she's got a really nice professional background that isn't generic, but that's okay, but something that shows us you well, it'd still be neat, clean, and professional. So well done on your kind of camera setup or your presentation. Your presentation. I know it's kind of something that we as Toastmasters don't maybe think about a whole lot now, but it's still something that needs to be talked about because people aren't doing it well. So thank you so much. I think that was something you did really well. Some suggestions for feedback, and I have to confess, and I know a number of our fellow club members would agree with me here, for an icebreaker speech, this was really good. And it was actually, the feedback I'm going to give you is super nitpicky, high-end, advanced feedback. And I'd like to give you two. One, the first piece of feedback I'd like to give you for improvement is that you could use pauses more often for impact. You gave us a jam-packed story with lots of really great details, and there were a couple places where you could really punch up the story. A great example. You talk about starting your career and you went to one job and then to another job in a software company. That's where you met your husband, and it was a new job, a new city, a new life. And then you met your husband and you planned a wedding and were buying a house at the same time. I wouldn't recommend that. And then just let it hang, because it really was like, whoa, and give us a minute to appreciate that with you. The other piece of feedback I'd give you is that if you really wanted to punch the humor in this story, you could have used that phrase a couple more times. Like other kid and a new job, and then our house got hit by lightning. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could have used that phrase a couple of times to really tie the story together and add a lot of humor. I don't know if humor was your desire, but that's one thing that you could look for in the future, is using that repeating phrase. The thing that I do want to end with this evening, and something that, again, you totally knocked out of the park, was the structure of your speech. And that's one of the elements of this icebreaker speech, is to use the basic structure of the speech. So you gave us an introduction. Actually, you start with an attention getter, and I want to talk about that. You gave us an introduction. You gave us conclusion. I love the conclusion of, where some of our thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Really wrapped it up very nicely. But that attention getter that you used right out of the gate, I don't know about you, but most mornings I start off with the need to do's. That got our attention. We've all had that experience, and you use that throughout your speech. So the structure, your presentation of your speech were phenomenal, and just with a couple of tweaks, I think it'll really up the impact of your speech. Thank you so much, Kelly. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, and I look forward to hearing more speeches from you. Mr. General Evaluator.